Why are Jeffrey Epstein's ties to Israeli intelligence being actively buried by the Trump administration? Almost all of the mainstream media doesn't want you to talk about this at all. They're not covering it. And alternative media is almost entirely not covering these connections. Why is this one part of the story just being left aside? It's a good question because the silence is deafening. Well, stunning new revelations are coming to light showing just how deep those ties were between Israeli intelligence and Jeffrey Epstein. Perhaps that's why we haven't received the Epstein files, because it would embarrass a foreign adversary. Almost no one in alternative media is doing actual journalism to get to the bottom of it. However, our next guest is Murtaza Hussain from Dropsite News, along with his journalism partner Ryan Grimm, have just dropped a few bombshells over the past few days, but the most recent one dropped today on Jeffrey Epstein's ties to foreign intelligence. Once again, here's the headline. Israeli spy stayed for weeks at a time with Jeffrey Epstein in Manhattan. Their latest article shows just how top Israeli spy stays with Epstein at his New York City apartment for weeks at a time.
It happens.
And that's just the beginning of it. Murtaza is joining us today to talk all about that and the latest revelations that you guys have been digging into. Welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Clayton and Natalie. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. So it's just kind of a normal occurrence, I guess, for Israeli spies to be staying at your house for weeks at a time.
Right.
When's the last time an Israeli spy stayed at your house for weeks at a time?
I got one in the bathroom right now, actually. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for discussing this issue on the show. And as you said, there is like a blackout on the subject. And, our reporting, as you mentioned, we've done a couple stories on this subject in the past few weeks. It's not based on any private information that's not already out there. There's the House Oversight Committee disclosures. There's documents about Epstein that was released as part of a lawsuit between JP Morgan and the U.S. Virgin Islands over allegations that they helped facilitate his sex trafficking. And finally, there's several caches of leaked emails, which are on the internet on a website called the Distributed Denial of Secrets, which is like a successor to WikiLeaks in a way, which show you Epstein's contacts with senior Israeli officials. It's kind of all out there, but people have not been discussing this angle of the story. And, we've been digging into it at Dropsite, spending time going through the publicly released documents as well as the hacked documents. And there's a lot there. It's interesting because some of the reporting that has been done, it's kind of like nothing burger reporting. They've reported this happened, we already knew this, and then they treat that as the story. That's a term that people may be familiar with. In my opinion, it's called a limited hangout.
Limited hangout. Yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was thinking that's a limited hangout. You just give us this little drop of news and you say, no, that's already been reported. That's not really news. So shut up about it.
Exactly. So, we've been reporting it very in depth, and we're following the story where it goes. And it does show tremendous contacts of Epstein with not just Israeli intelligence, but also Russian intelligence and U.S. intelligence as well, too. But it seems like he worked very closely with the Israelis. And I think that issue may be why it's too sensitive, or people don't like to discuss it, or they don't want to invest resources in covering it, because it's a very politically sensitive issue in the United States. And, it steps on a lot of people's toes. But we're a small organization and we're professionals, so we're able to cover it and we're interested in covering it. And I can say there's a lot there.
And so your reporting shows that this person was connected to then Israeli Minister of Defense Ehud Barak, who comes up often in Epstein's life story. So that it's not unusual, right? Can you just maybe give us a reminder of his connection to Israel? And as Tucker Carlson says many times, just what is the likelihood that someone without training, like Jeffrey Epstein, without really ties, without a family connection, without any panache in his life before this, has all of these high level connections?
So that's a really important point you raised, because if you look at these emails, it's fascinating because obviously it shows the relationship between Barak, the former Israeli prime minister and defense minister, and Epstein. But it's not like Epstein is looking up to Barak or trying to get his attention. It's really vice versa. The power dynamic is all really on Epstein's side in these conversations. And Epstein is effectively helping Barak while he's defense minister, and after he leaves his role as Israeli defense minister in 2013, helping him make money, helping him make contacts all around the world, and kind of using him as a tool of promoting Israeli intelligence-linked surveillance technology firms to foreign countries. And in doing so, Barak made a lot of money. But Epstein himself didn't seem to be interested in making money, and he had more contacts with people around the world, high-level government officials in Central Asia and Europe and Africa and Russia and Israel and the U.S., more connections than anyone I think can ever organically have, if that makes sense. He was very, very connected. He was making introductions for Barack and others all over the world, the high-level business people in the U.S. as well, too. He was at the center of all of it. He was like a fixer for very powerful people. And like I said, people often ask the question, and I heard this circulating long before our reporting, did Epstein work for the Mossad or something like that? I think the answer is no. I don't think he did work for the Mossad. It was more like the Mossad was beneath him in some hierarchy that he was under. I don't have the full picture of it. I don't think anyone does yet. It's still something evolving as information comes out. Hopefully the Epstein files from the Trump administration will eventually come out. But, clearly from looking at the emails, it's not that he's taking orders from Barack or anyone like that. If anything, it's almost...
in your reporting, I think one of maybe the story that I thought was totally buried is this Alex Acosta, the U.S. prosecutor story that came out in October. So I think this got buried. I didn't hear about any reporting on this really at all, which is what he then said in this interview, because it's been widely reported that Alex Acosta said, that Epstein was intelligence. That's why we didn't go further or harder with more of a prosecution angle on Jeffrey Epstein because he was intelligence. Basically, I was told to back off. And now he's like refuting that.
Well, that's the really interesting part, because so much of this stuff is contained in disclosures that the government's already made. In my opinion, they made these disclosures in a very, they underplayed it and they released them in a way which is deliberately disorganized or, effectively disorganized, makes it difficult to find put it together in the way that we did. But, these are Epstein's schedules. And we saw this Israeli intelligence agent's name in the schedule that the government released showing Epstein's personal communications. This testimony by Acosta, he's sort of disavowing something that he reportedly said to Steve Bannon many years ago, that Epstein was, quote unquote, with intelligence. And that's why he was pressured to give him a sweetheart deal in his first sex trafficking conviction. He seems to disavow that in this new testimony that was released by the government. But ironically, the same batch of information that they released, the same documents they released, show exactly what Acosta is denying, that Epstein clearly did have ties with at least Israeli intelligence, because Israeli intelligence agents, high-level military intelligence people, were staying in his apartment in Manhattan on numerous occasions. So that itself belies the claim they made in that transcript. I think that maybe they're counting on two things, like the major news organizations can be politically pressured not to report on it. And then the smaller ones or individuals, they may not have the time or the resources to report on it. DropSite's a small organization, but we're all professionals. We've been reporting for many, many years. So we're able to do it with relatively little resources. But, they've created a situation where it's as difficult as possible to do that. And it's just fascinating because all the story is already right there. It's just that people are unable or unwilling to put it together at the moment. And regardless of what they're doing to try to suppress the story, more information which is undermining that is coming out. So that's why I think the political pressure and you guys covering it, other people talking about it, is great, because we need to see the full transparency about this issue, because it seems to implicate so many people and it's so damning. I can see why they're trying to suppress it. But, it's in the interest of people who live in this country and pay taxes that they should know what exactly was happening. What would Jeffrey Epstein ties to foreign countries or intelligence agencies here? What was going on? And I'll say one last thing. The story we just reported about Ehud Barak and this Israeli military intelligence agent who was staying at Epstein's house, one of the things that came out in the Snowden documents, which I also reported on many years ago, over a decade now, was that the NSA was surveilling Barak and this agent at that time. So the U.S. government was concerned about what was going on, too, for some reason that never disclosed. I think we need to have transparency about that now, and we need to know what exactly was taking place, because I don't think they can suppress the story any longer without the truth in some form coming out.
That's wild.
That
Snowden piece is wild. That's not an aside. That's huge to me. Also huge that you reported that Epstein had a role in brokering a security agreement between Israel and Mongolia, brokering a back channel between Israel and Russia during the Syrian war. He was not an elected official. So why did he have any diplomatic power, given that the United States, that there were some adults in the room who knew that this guy was trafficking children, but that was just a little hobby on the side. He brokered peace deals between international countries. That belies any logic.
But he's a diplomat. He's a sex trafficker, but he's also a diplomat. So we'll just give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. He's a math teacher. He's a very, very active math teacher.
Yeah. He's like, who is Duncan Brody? The Jekyll and Hyde.
Right.
Basically.
By day he's this, by night he's going out
like,
and doing
sure,
this.
he does some sex trafficking at night, but also he's doing peace deals diplomatically.
So, very briefly on that point, he had very close ties with very powerful Russian oligarchs who were able to set up meetings for Barack on Epstein's behalf with Vladimir Putin. He had so much pull and so much influence and able to connect people and to make the necessary introductions. He was, according to his correspondence, he was talking to Putin himself as well, too, about various different things. He was somebody who was in a very, very unique position, extremely powerful, extremely sought after, and none of the explanation about who he was or what he was up to really makes much sense. And all that the narrative that currently exists does not add up. And I see why people are upset about this, and they're going to get more upset the longer it stays out, because it's almost insulting people's intelligence, insulting the intelligence of the American public, because you're telling them something which is self-evidently not true, and just counting on them not being able to dig up the actual facts of the matter.
Right. I mean, you're gaslighting people, and you're telling them that when you ask questions about Epstein's Israeli ties, shut up, you anti-Semite. Can't ask questions about it. Or we were told that this is not MAGA. Remember a few weeks ago we were told that this is not MAGA.
Who cares about that? And also, it's anti-American as well.
It's anti-American to ask questions about Epstein. Can I just ask you about, so maybe if we drill in a little bit more on who this guy was, this Israeli spy that just happened to be sleeping at Jeffrey Epstein's house for weeks at a time. What do we know about this guy?
Yeah, so this gentleman was named Yoni Koren. He was Ehud Barak's chief of staff for many years. He was a very well-known person in the Israeli security establishment. He'd taken part in many operations. He was like, a very storied figure and decorated figure in the Israeli security establishment. He worked closely with Barak for many, many years. And as per the correspondence that we see in Barak's inbox, he was working with Epstein and Barak to help source technology from Israeli cyber weapon companies as part of their ongoing work to promote these companies around the world, and in promoting them, also subsequently promote diplomatic deals between Israel and foreign countries. So basically, there was like this interesting sort of operation they had going where they would accomplish multiple things at the same time. They would go to foreign countries which had security problems and say, hey, Barak would go through Epstein's invitation, usually most of the time. And he would say, hey, we have a way of solving these problems with you. I'm Ehud Barak. I was the Israeli defense minister. I was a very, well-known prime minister and security official for many years. I can connect you with these technology firms that can help build up a surveillance apparatus for you. We've reported some of the details of those apparatuses they built in places like Cote d'Ivoire. And, we can solve your security problem. If you have an uprising or if you have a disloyalty in the army or something like that, we can help you build a full-fledged turnkey security package with the help of these Israeli firms. And these firms were led by people who were also Israeli intelligence agents. So it was kind of like a full circle. And then the firms would come into the country and then they would set up their security system, set up their surveillance system. And then a few years later, most of the time or very often, the Israeli government would come and sign a formal security agreement with that country to solidify the pact that had begun with these private sector security cooperation. And this cooperation, which was never really, of course, mentioned when they signed the final deal, is that it was initially, put together or facilitated by Jeffrey Epstein. And Jeffrey Epstein helped Barak do this in Mongolia. He helped do it in Cote d'Ivoire. He helped do it in some other countries, because we're going to do some more stories about this. We already have a schedule of stories lined up talking about different countries where this happened. And, he was very integral into making these connections happen. He was a back channel operator, extremely powerful, influential one. And he helped build security states created by Israel, in many, many different countries around the world. And, one can imagine when a foreign country is building a surveillance apparatus, the back doors that they could build into that, their own access, unbeknownst to the end user that they may have, data privacy, all those issues, they all come to light. And we think about it in terms of China, and rightly so a lot of the time, but, obviously the same issue arises with Israel too. What did they build in these systems? And, how did Jeffrey Epstein, why was he so invested in helping him do this? That's also, I think, a legitimate question.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sounds really like a clean guy.
Nobody's ever asked me to broker any diplomatic deals as a private citizen. It's just ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we should check with our kids' math teachers and see if they're out there also.
I know.
Moonlighting as diplomats somewhere trying to broker peace agreements. Murtaza, thank you so much for this.
You guys are killing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Check out Drop Site News and what you guys are working on next. You got a great series of documents over there. Again,
Subscribe to their newsletter if you're not already.
Why is no one covering this? I just don't understand. I mean, it's because I guess Trump told everyone to stop talking about it, so we all